Penguin Random House Audio presents The Other Sun by Alexander Soderberg. Translated by Neil Smith. Read for you by Gildart Jackson. Prologue. The vehicle was driving fast, swerving wildly, accelerating and braking erratically. Sophie couldn't hear properly. Everything was muffled, as if she were underwater. The ambulance sirens blaring out into the dark night sounded dull and distant. A harsh, cold blue light kept swirling in and out of the space around her. She was lying on a gurney, strapped down, as she felt the ambulance lurch. She tried to look around. The back of the ambulance felt like a tunnel, as though it had been stretched. Everything was like a feverish dream. She could see Jens, which made her feel more secure. He made his way toward her. Dully, she heard him try to comfort her, tell her that everything was going to be all right. But she didn't believe him, because his whole face was saying the opposite. He radiated anxiety and sorrow. She whispered the name of the person who had stabbed her with the knife, repeating the name to Jens twice. There was a paramedic beside her, working hard and intently. She looked down at herself, managing to raise her head ever so slightly. The blanket, tucked tightly around her, was covered in blood. He had twisted the knife inside her. She remembered that. First, he had thrust it into her as deeply as he could. Then, he had twisted it, to and fro, to cause as much damage as possible. To kill her. An itchy chill enveloped her. A nausea made more oppressive by an immense physical weakness that seemed to emanate from her neck or somewhere around there. That was followed by a dizzying sense that she was upside down, weightless, in an altered state, that she was at the point of toppling over a cliff, a boundary, and losing everything. Sophie couldn't hold on. The chill was getting worse, cutting through her whole being, and she started to shake. The shakes radiating through her entire body, hard and uncontrollable. The paramedic was above her, holding her body down onto the gurney with all his weight, trying to keep her still. She looked into his eyes and saw fear in them. And then she realized what was happening. Sophie heard herself say, "No," several times. "No, dear God, I can't do this. Not now." She realized she was about to die. Part 1. 4 weeks earlier. Chapter 1. Istanbul. The coffee was sweet, black, and treacly. Sophie left it untouched, as did Aron, who was sitting beside her in the lavish room listening to Basir, the fat Turk opposite them on the other side of the desk, as he tried to haggle and gain the upper hand. Behind Basir's bulky frame sat his silent bodyguard, wiry, swarthy, and alert. He sat there observing everything. The bodyguard had searched them brusquely and thoroughly before the meeting began. Everything was fine now. Basir smiled at them as if they were old friends, but they had never met before. Basir was a front. The weapons were destined to end up somewhere else. Where didn't matter, but he was important because he was the one they were negotiating with. Basir was very talkative. He babbled and chattered as if the sheer quantity of words he uttered would improve his position rather than what he was actually saying. Sophie interrupted him. "We'll send the goods through and you'll have to get them out," she said. "Everything has to go smoothly, otherwise it could all grind to a halt. And if it grinds to a halt, there's a greater risk of mistakes happening." Basir dismissed her concern with a wave of his hand. "I know this city. I know everyone, the police, customs officers, transport officials. This is my city. Everything will be fine, trust me." The room was ostentatious, overblown. Everything was dark red. Thick carpets, long curtains, big heavy furniture, brass ornaments all over the place. "So what do you need us for, then?" Sophie asked. His smile wavered slightly. You've got the weapons, he said. And we'll supply them in small consignments over a period of 4 months. That's how we're going to do this. And we'll pay after each consignment, Bashir said. That's the best way, believe me, he repeated. I believe you, but that isn't what's going to happen. She smiled. Bashir looked offended. Isn't it? A phone rang twice in a neighboring room. She said calmly, You pay in 1 installment for everything, payable now. He glanced quickly at his watch. What if it does grind to a halt? If something happens? If we lose a consignment? He asked. Sophie smiled. Are you in a hurry? She asked. He pretended not to understand. You looked at the time, Sophie explained. I do that occasionally, don't you? His laugh sounded false and put on, almost like a cough. He wasn't what she had been expecting, Bashir. According to the people who had helped set up the deal, Bashir was supposed to be a reasonable man, calm, straightforward, and uncomplicated, with a degree of honor in his approach to business, the nature of his business notwithstanding. But this man was quite different from that. Yes, when I'm in a hurry, she said. Well, I'm not in a hurry, he laughed again. Everything felt very peculiar. Sophie glanced at Aron to see if he was feeling the same as she was. He was busy studying Bashir. What was your question? She asked the Turk. Yes, what was my question? He muttered, slightly bewildered, as he cast a glance at his bodyguard, who replied quietly in Turkish without taking his eyes off Aron. If we lose a consignment, Bashir said. You won't, Sophie said. You just said so because you know everyone. You know what goes on in this city. It's yours. True, he laughed again. He was getting more nervous. Sophie considered the situation. She had a feeling that he saw these negotiations as something to be endured, and that he wanted to get away, that his reasons for sitting there were quite different from hers, that this wasn't about doing business at all, because if it were, this wasn't the way it was done. So, what do you say, Bashir? She asked. He pretended to think. Beads of sweat had broken out on his forehead. He was off balance. Let's do as you say, then, he said. We pay you now. You arrange to send us the weapons as you suggested. That's probably best. Just like that? She could feel Aron's electrified reaction beside her. He felt the same as she did. The bodyguard adjusted his position on the chair. Aron noticed. Thank you, Bashir, she said. Stay and have coffee with us, he said. The mistakes were coming thick and fast now. You didn't drink coffee after a deal, not with a man like this. You drank it before, and they had already done that. Stillborn chat that didn't go anywhere. She turned to Aron. He was staring at Bashir, reading him like an open book. Aron? She asked. I know, he said quietly. They heard heavy footsteps on the stairs outside the closed door, steps that were making their way up toward them. The bodyguard reached for the gun in his shoulder holster. Aron threw himself at him as Sophie rushed toward the door behind them. No key, just a handle. She grabbed hold of a chair and wedged the back of it under the handle. The bodyguard was out cold. Aron had moved on to Bashir and had him on the floor. A lead paperweight on the desk took care of the thick-set Turk. Heavy thuds against the door. They were on the 4th floor, no way out apart from the door. Aron grabbed the bodyguard's pistol, tipped the desk over, and aimed the gun at the door. Sophie crouched down next to the door. The blows got heavier. The door was about to give way. At a signal from Aron, she pulled the chair away and the door flew open. Aron fired several shots in quick succession, moving the pistol a few centimeters from side to side until the magazine was empty and the gun started to click. Then he vanished behind the desk. Silence. Gunpowder. The smell of cordite. Sophie stared at a point on
Sample complete. Ready to continue?